Hello everyone and welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week here in Split, Croatia. We're at the Faculty of Economics and we have a fireside chat with Burak Canboy, owner of WinRAR company. This is something new since we started with the fireside chats this year and we plan on having them further. So just to start, Burak is the owner of WinRAR company. I'm guessing that I don't have to introduce WinRAR all that much for now, but I'm going to let Burak first to say some words about himself, and then we'll go on with the questions. So, Burak, could you please introduce yourself a bit to our viewers?
Sure, thank you for having me here today. I'm living in Split for now 16 months. We moved here with my family, and I am very grateful that I can have the opportunity here to speak to upcoming entrepreneurs and wish to share some of our experiences that we've had. And I'm always happy to share anecdotes from 15 years of WinRAR. When I took over the business of WinRAR, the product was already existing. So that is a little bit unique. We have a situation where the product is older than the company which I represent. However, we thought that's a great idea to use that as a topic for our fireside chat. What have we learned as a company from WinRAR as a compression tool? And I'm sure there'll be some funny stories about that.
So we'll get to the funny stories. What can you tell us about WinRAR today? Where do you see the company, its history, and where do you see it going? How do you see it moving on?
Well, in the internet age, already a company that's 15 years old is considered almost dead. So we're still alive. The product itself is even older than that, as I said, goes back all the way into DOS times, before Windows. And ever since we started, we always said, well, we have 1, 2, 3 more years that we can do this for sure. And if we're lucky, we will do this longer than that. So this we have been able to say 12 times. Every year after 3 years, we said, hey, we still have 2 or 3 years, and then we'll see what comes. So in that regard, not much has changed since we started, but of course, as you can see now, everybody has a mobile phone, everybody has, we talked about their tablets, laptops, internet everywhere. So the usage has changed in regards to how people use WinRAR, what is their main concern. But thanks to the ease of use of packing multiple files together, sending them as an email attachment or uploading them to a page, or the combination of compression and encryption still keeps the product popular, and we will see how long that will last. We hope for a very long time.
Yeah, that's what we talked about yesterday. The internet moves on, the speeds are getting even higher and everything, but the point with WinRAR, and we smiled about it yesterday, is it always works. Like 15 years ago and now it just works. It's basically the thing that differentiates it from the competition which comes on. Everyone goes in hard and hard. So how do you like being an entrepreneur? Did it grow on you? Did you feel like you were born with it? I know you ran basketball club a long time ago, so how do you...
Well, my family would probably say I'm born with it, because they are from a small city, or now bigger city in Turkey called Kayseri, which is a very famous city for trade and entrepreneurship. So when it comes to them, I had it in me from the beginning. But from my perspective, of course, I had to learn most things like everybody else did too. Of course, I had the advantage that I have parents who had a more closer relation with haggling, buying things at a cheaper price or buying stuff that we really need. That's something, of course, I learned as a child, but that's pretty much the extent of what I would say was given to me from my parents or from birth. Everything else was learning by doing. As you said, I started with basketball, so when I was 16 years old, I was already in charge of some basketball teams. I was referee. Then at the age of 18, I was managing a team. That means I was talking to potential sponsors, writing press releases, preparing posters, all the stuff that you would expect when you go to see some basketball team. It was not a high-level team, but that also grew. So by the time I started with WinRAR, I had already gone through moving into the second league with a third league team in Germany that I was managing. And then I started to study. I worked for a local ISP in Germany that was at that time the distributor for WinRAR in Germany and in the US. So there, as a marketing manager, I was also able to apply the knowledge that I brought from basketball, but it gave that new perspective into internet, into call center services, into development, and all that came at that point and was new, which I had to soak up again. And then at some point we felt, okay, now we're ready to start a company, and we did. And the success then still overwhelmed us, but it gradually got there. And with every problem that we have every day, it's the same thing. Well, if there's a problem, there must be a solution. So let's try to find it.
What would you say as an entrepreneur, listening to you, sort of what is the main thing for young entrepreneurs to try and grasp? You know, like we talked yesterday about the need to constantly change, to constantly be on the edge of something. You know, that would you say that is the main part or something else?
Well, as you started to say, the times are changing. So I would say one of the most important things you need to do today is to keep an open mind.
Yeah, sure.
Compared, it's not a very long time now when you look back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But what you see is that the speed of change is also changing. So when I started, we maybe had 10, 20, hundreds of ideas that we said, oh, we can do that later, we can do that later, we can do that later. And maybe 10% of them took 10 years and they were never done. So you could go after 10 years into your drawer and pick up some papers and say, oh, this project is still modern and nobody has still done it, so let's do it now.
Yeah, let's try.
Yeah, if today you have 100 ideas, tomorrow probably 99 of them somebody else will have started to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying there's a huge difference. Today you need to be much more open-minded, much faster in what you want to do, and you have much less opportunity to make mistakes. So I would say today is a harder time to start as an entrepreneur. However, in return for all this negative or risk that you get, you have the huge opportunity of internet and globalization and vast access to knowledge that you didn't have in that extent when I started.
Yeah, sure.
So obviously these skill sets, how can I quickly get my information? How can I find people somewhere in the vast continents of internet and countries, and even in some jungle or island somewhere, as long as he has an internet connection, he may be the right guy that I need now. So this has completely changed. And as you said before, in the past you had more relation to friends, connections in your city, in your school, etc. And now you need to find ways to find them on the internet, in social networks, and just in some way that was totally unimaginable back then. So you're focusing more on what are my demands now, how can I find them? Whereas when we started, often it was more, well, we need to take this person, or we need to work with this because there's no alternative. And you were just making compromises on what you use and try to make the best of it. Now it's much easier to say, this is exactly what I need. Now let's try to find who can do that for me.
Yeah, that's what you said it great. I remember going back to 1997 when 96 actually, when I first started dabbling on the internet. We would write www dot and then where, what to learn, where to go, because back then internet had about 300,000 websites. As today it has several billion. I don't know how many. But the one thing that you said about the skill set as an entrepreneur, but also as a worker. We talked about your workforce, the people who work for you, and also how important is it for them to be ready to learn, to change, to adapt. Especially one of your workers who's like the jack of all trades. He does everything. So is it very hard for you to find workers, or is it like you said yesterday, they come, they find you?
It's a combination of both. So of course there are situations when we feel we need somebody, and where can we find this person now? But most of the time it's been, well, okay, we have a huge brand, we have a lot of traffic, we have a good name, so we go to university and just put a job description on the wall and say, okay, if somebody comes, then it will probably be the right person, because they will recognize us and are ready to do something for us. So usually we used to put more barriers into finding people than trying to open up. So when we put our posters out on the university, I said, well, if somebody wants to apply to work for us, they must talk at least 2 foreign languages fluently. True. At least, yeah. And in Germany, that happened in a time where people were, well, you will be lucky if you find somebody who speaks English fluently, or at least maybe French fluently or Spanish fluently, but you're talking about 2 foreign languages. That means that person has to speak at least 3 languages fluently. How are you going to find that? But we said, no, that is our job description. We want to have an international group here. WinRAR has always been known as a very well translated software. So for a very long time, we were able to say it's the most translated software in the world. And we have a vast network of partners in different countries. So it was important to me to say we also put that in our workforce. They also need to be able to bring international work together. They need to be able to not just handle one market, but need to be flexible enough to move around languages. So we were lucky in that regard. That's a luxury problem always. If you say, well, people want to work for you, which ones do we choose? On the other hand, we also had a situation where our systems administrator and our leading developer, together with the trainee in development, they left within a short period of time.
That took you probably time.
And we were basically not sleeping at night
several days.
Because, no, not only several days, several months, because we were running an infrastructure and we didn't know when are we going to find the right person. Right? Yeah. Luckily, our systems administrator that we're working with together now, he may be watching, so hi, Rene. He found an ad on rarlab.com. He applied, coming from Berlin, our office being in Berlin. It clicked, everything worked out, and he's with us ever since, and we're very happy. So it can be both ways. Sometimes you really say, oh, we tried everything, but we don't find somebody. But on other times, it can be like, yeah, we will just take what we really need, and thanks for your application, but we don't need anyone else right now.
Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk with told me that they prefer a person that they can click with, like you said, because it's vital in work, and also for employees and for the owners of the company to feel like you're on the same level with the person. And if you're feeling like you're distant from what the company goals are and what they're trying to do, it's different for someone to work in that situation. So that's nice that you did that. Okay, so I'm going to let you do your presentation, the startup framework. But just one more thing I have to ask: why Split? Why did you choose Split?
Well, I expected that question to come.
You had to get it.
But it's funny that you would ask that.
Yeah, I know. Since I moved here, also,
for us the normal answer is why not? Right?
True,
Why?
true.
What's wrong with this place that everybody is asking? Why Split? So no, we feel very warmly welcome here. So apart from weather, food being great. And the culture that you have here, the sea that you have outdoors, those are all really great things to have. But on the other hand, we never had any of those problems that locals seem to think about when they're asking us, why did you come here? So going through the formalities to get our papers approved, that was not a big problem. Finding the apartment that we moved into and which we bought now was not a big problem. We never felt that there is anything going on that makes us feel insecure or people trying to rip us off or anything. It's for us always, as I say, why not? It's like, I understand that a lot of young people like to go into other places to learn, to possibly earn more money than they can do here with the same qualifications. But luckily, I'm over that. For me, it doesn't matter where I work.
Yeah.
And
global worker.
Yeah. And so for me, it's more about where do we want to feel comfortable? Where do we think we will be comfortable? And we just had the main burden or risk that we have a son who is now 10 years old. So when we moved here, we didn't know if he will be able to accommodate the situation. And if he will be able to learn, if he will be able to learn the language, if he will be able to find friends here. And we said from the beginning, okay, we'll take 1 year time. If everything works out, then the plan is to stay here forever. If it doesn't, then we tried and we must try somewhere else.
Excellent. Yeah. So basically, it was the same thing with me. When I moved here in 2008, everyone told me, why did you choose Split? I mean, you came from Rijeka, that is a Cikvan, it's close to Rijeka. But the city is sort of like, you easily blend in. For a foreigner like me or you, it's quite easy to just blend in and feel it at home. Okay, thank you very much for the chat. I'm going to leave you to give the presentation, and basically that's it. So Burak Canboy, the presentation.
All right.
We're going straight.
Thank you. Well, I wasn't expecting that will be done so quickly, but that will mean that all of you won't have to sit here all Friday night.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that some of them would ask you a question, because for me, just a little bit to ask to see what, how, where.
We will definitely have a lot of time for questions and answers. If you already have something now, please feel free to ask now, or otherwise we'll do that after I'm done. I set up this topic today also as some type of market analysis for me. So I will also be asking you a couple of questions when I'm done. And I hope that this topic is something that can give you a little bit of guidance in the future. But before I start, I would like to understand a little bit about you guys. How many of you are still students here? Can you raise a hand? So we have 3 students here. Okay. How many of you have already started a company? I know Marin has 2, so okay, 2. How many of you are thinking about starting a company? All right, okay. So I think we have a good match, at least for the topic, and also for me, as I said. So I would be interested to see what you guys think about what I have to say. So one of the reasons I chose this topic or this project that I'm working on right now is that I have not only started WinRAR, but we've also started a couple of other companies. We've also invested into a couple of companies at different stages. And after some of them went in the wrong direction, not to say even some of them were total failures, I decided, how can we not make the same mistakes again? And that was one of the ideas for the Fireside Chat was, what did we learn as WinRAR GmbH from WinRAR, the software program? Compression is about trying to cut down on repetitions. Try to save time by not having to do the same things over and over again. So we tried to implement that into our own company. And at some point I saw, okay, we're doing that pretty well in our own company, but why are others who are starting their company not doing the same? And I chose this quote from a friend in Amsterdam who is in the same field or had the same problems. He's also working with startups. He had his own companies. He's helping in an incubator in Amsterdam. And when I discussed this framework with him about a year ago, I think he just nailed it with that. And I thought this is what we will be talking about. And this is the main, the shortest way of expressing why I'm working on this framework. And I love what he's saying about you're spending a lot of time on idiotic organizational and administrative processes. So you have to. That is, the question is, why is it idiotic? Why is it required? You can't really change that. It's there. You must do it. But the question is, how can you save as much time? How can you try to focus the best on what your idea is rather than what are you forced to do? One of the reasons one of the things we did in WinRAR was in the very early stages when the paperless office became popular, we decided we can't implement it in our company. But we can move the printer from the room where everybody sits into all the other end of our office, so that whenever you have to print something, you have to go there to pick it up. Right? So think about, do I really have to print this? Yes, you have to print it. And you have to walk there, but don't be mad at me. Now you can be mad at the government or the tax office or our lawyer or somebody else, because nobody in our company is forcing you to print that. It's not needed for our business. You're now walking for the Federal Republic of Germany to pick up the paper from that printer. So that was one thing where I said, okay, there are things you must do, but you must also use them in a way that you understand, this is not my core business. Now I'm forced to do something I'm not wanting to do. I'm going there, I'll do it fine. But in the meantime, I still have to think, how can I get rid of that? I don't have time to walk to the printer to do that. So find some way that I can get rid of this process. And this is something I personally feel is very important, and that's why I think I have the closest match to WinRAR. Cut repetitions, try to do things only one time, and if it's not possible, work on trying to get rid of it anyways. Understand that's not why you're working. That's not why you're an entrepreneur. That's something somebody else decided everybody must do. Then you must do it, but that doesn't mean that you still cannot find a way to do it simpler. So now, when you think about starting a company, I say you're basically at the beginning of a large journey. You have some great idea, you want to do something, or you think you're very talented in some service or something else that you think is your product or your company in the future, but you really don't know what to expect. I mean, there are some entrepreneurs given that are starting at a later age, But normally you would start without any real business background. Maybe you've worked a little bit and gained some knowledge, but you really don't know what kind of decisions to expect when you start your company. On the other hand, every one of you will have to make those decisions. And most of those decisions will be the same for each one of you. But you don't get to think about that when you're doing your day-to-day stuff. And I'm trying to solve that. I'm trying to find a solution or offer a solution where basically every entrepreneur can say, hey, why should I have to think about this problem again when others have already done that before? Right? So I've started to put together a list to give you an example about all the detailed questions. So we're talking about different areas. I chose the legal one here first because that's usually the one where most people feel I immediately need to find an expert for this. I'm ready to pay money because this is so important that and too complicated for me to do myself, I need somebody. So now after 15 years of WinRAR and the years before with basketball, today I say I don't want to sign a contract which I don't understand 100%.
That's so true.
But to get there took me 20-25 years. The question is each one of you ready the moment you start your company? Because the first thing you'll do is you'll need to sign a company foundation form. You'll need to decide which legal structure you want to have for your company. Do you want to limit your liability? Do you want to issue shares? Do you want to have shareholders? Do you want to have a partnership with others in your group? Do I need a contract myself when I'm the director of the company? If so, what does it need to include? Not only for legal reasons, also for taxation reasons. Then if I employ somebody, what is the correct contract? Normally you don't make contracts for the time in which you have an agreement. You must make the contract for the time in which there is a huge problem and you have a disagreement. So when you sign the contract, you're actually always thinking, what can be the worst case scenario? You have to deal with somebody who you want to employ, but at the same time you have to treat him like a criminal, because that's what you need to write into the contract. This happens if you steal from me. This happens if you don't come to work. This happens if you're sick too often. This happens, etc., etc., etc. So all these things are not only a burden from the skill set, they're also an emotional burden. Right? I don't like sitting together with somebody and thinking, how do I have to protect myself from that person? No, I don't want to trust that person. But I have to protect myself at the same time. Not only myself, the company, the other employees, with the other employees, their families. So there's a huge load of stuff you need to think about when signing contracts. And then there are more simple things, but still legal work when you say, okay, I need to put terms of business on my page, I need to have a license agreement, I need to have a privacy policy, or other kinds of texts that are just burdensome to sit down and write. You may easily find them somewhere, but still you don't really know if what you find there is correct or is what you need. So now I'm still in the process of what decisions do you make? So this is what I just said. So even if you find something, you really don't know yet. Is that what I need? What other type of options are there to make a contract like that? What is my risk if I sign this? So my question to my lawyers is usually, how much am I risking when I sign this? It's not about what am I going to do. You need to tell me what can go wrong if I sign this. Yeah? So it's again risk opportunity evaluation that I could do now for a German set of rules or contracts, But I would have a huge problem doing that here in Croatia. I would have a huge problem differentiating contracts between UK and US, or US and Australia, even though they're all in English, or even Hong Kong and US. So at that point, you're starting to say, okay, now I need to trust somebody, or I need to pay somebody, because risks may be too high, or coming back to, I like to sleep at night. So if I want to sleep at night, I need to do something here, so I feel comfortable that what we've signed was the right thing. So that is about the ongoing stuff, but also you need to think about intellectual property and your brand when you start. So similar type of questions. How do I register my domain? How do I register a patent? How do I make sure nobody copies my ideas? If I have trade secrets, like I mentioned before, if I have a contract with an employee, how do I make sure they won't take all the secrets when they leave? So this was the legal side, where I say you're confronted with a lot of stuff you have no control over, but you need to find a solution in it. Similar thing happens on the finance and accounting side. Depending from country to country, some are more open to not collecting taxes, and some will put you in jail if you just make a wrong tax statement. So when you look at Bayern Munich's director, Uli Hoeneß, he was in jail. Why? Because he didn't pay his taxes in a country like Germany. So in Germany, I say, yeah, it's better to shoot somebody than not pay your taxes.
So we have
it's easier to not go in jail if you shoot somebody than if you don't pay your taxes. But in other countries, it's the other way around. I'm just saying it's something that, again, you can't control, but you must find a solution. And you're somebody who just started your company, and you want to code, or you want to build a prototype of something, but at the same time, somebody says, yeah, pay your taxes. Make the social insurance for your employees. I don't know, all kinds of questions. They will come to you that will distract you from what you actually want to do. If you're good, and that's probably what you're learning here at the university also is, you at least should have a business plan in place and think about how you want to use your money in the future. But even that part is something that you need to learn first, and there's hundreds of ways of changing the business plan along the way. So it's often something I say, okay, I can look at a business plan, but I really don't know if that business plan is still going to be correct tomorrow, because it's all just projections. But you need to decide, how much time do I want to spend on this projection, how am I going to build that, and what should happen if some catastrophic scenario or something that is not planned will happen. But again, another decision that is new. Now, something that a lot of you will more closely relate to in IT times. When I started, all this was completely new to me. So IT part today is more common, but you need to decide again, do I want to allow everybody to have their own email addresses, or do they have to use a company email address when they use Trello or Facebook or whatever different platform that you log into, Gmail, etc., Microsoft 365, and wherever you want to go and log into? Will you allow them to use their own email address, or do they all have to do it through their company email address? When you do it through their company email address, do you have everything set up properly to support that? Are you legally, again back to legal, are you even allowed to do that, to restrict somebody to use that? Then communication rules. Coming back again to cutting repetitions, in our company, we prefer to write than to speak. Speaking is great. Speaking is also a type of backup, because when you speak to somebody, he will know what I just told him, and he may remember later, or she. But if I write it in an email, then it becomes documented knowledge of the company. If I write it in a chat, I can copy-paste it again. So each company must make decisions on what's more important. friendly talk, smile, immediate feedback that you have in a personal conversation, or long-term archiving of knowledge if you write it down. If you write it in a chat, can you copy-paste it? Is that more important to you, or is it more important to say, this is personal, this is a very emotional topic, it is very important that I immediately can react to what the other person is saying, or the way he's looking, or some other type of stuff that's lost when I'm over the phone or when I'm typing. I don't have these kind of feedbacks. So we made rules on when to talk or write, in which way. You need to do that again. Everybody, and that's again back, everybody who's starting the company for himself needs to make these decisions, even though a lot of people have made these decisions before. Then how do you use knowledge management? How do you use project management? Do you make sure that you have your backups in place? If you're going deeper into coding, did you agree on a coding framework? Do you make sure that the code is documented well? Do you make sure that at least 2 people must see each line of code before it's implemented in your software? Do you have different kinds of version control systems in place? Do you have the Git in place, which means you can see at a later time who made changes to the code? And that's again a legal question, so in case that person leaves, you can always say, here, code says you changed this on December 12, 1976. Ha! And I have a work contract. You were working with me on that date. So obviously I paid you to do that for me. So these kind of things I have to learn, and you will have to learn also. But when it comes to preparing your company, some of these small things can make a huge difference. As I said, you might have to fight somebody over this. The existence of your company may depend on that. If some former employee of you decides to start a competing company by copying the entire source code and everything he's done for your company, then you're in an existential situation. How can I prove that actually I paid you to do this for me, and now you're doing the same thing, and I have to lay off my employees, and I have to face some credits that I took depending that this will be successful, and now you're copying everything, I still have all the risks, and you're saying, wonderful. I just do everything that this guy paid me to do, and now I don't have to pay him anymore. So, things to prepare for. Security issue. This is kind of a security issue, but also, of course, you know, there's malware, there's security breaches and industrial espionage, etc., where people will try to break into your systems. We just had a major DDoS attack on WinRAR last week or 10 days ago, where just for the fun, people will try to kill your infrastructure. So you need to be ready for all these kind of things. Again, every entrepreneur for himself, over and over, everybody doing the same things, but no such system in place that you would say, hey, these guys already done it, I can just do the same, copy, paste, and problem is solved. And similar things you might think about fire drills. You do that in school maybe, you have the fire alarm and you go outside, but rarely anybody does this in IT today. We have implemented at some point that we say, hey, if Burak calls in the morning that the office is closed, then we need to be able to do our work somewhere else. So not many people do that, but we had this another funny anecdote. So when I came up with this idea of fire drills, we said, you know what? We as a company, we want to be ready for the comet to hit our office. So in case we come to our office and the office is gone, that should not be a problem for us. We need to be able to do it somewhere else. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, some of you may remember, a meteorite struck Earth. in the Chelyabinsk region, in the Ural Mountains. And guess who's living there? The developer of WinRAR, Yevgeny Roshal. He is writing to me an email, Burak, we're now scratching the glasses out of my wardrobe, which luckily was standing between me and the window. Now, my biggest problem is we have minus 35 degrees and nobody has windows in all of Ural Mountains. So we're saying, yeah, that's good. Lucky that's your only problem, because now we must say, hey, you don't only have to be ready for the comet to struck your office. Now I must also say, because it will. So no matter how improbable this may seem when you first say it, it can still happen. So don't underestimate this. Be ready for some kind of huge catastrophe that you may not think about being possible. This one's fast, easier, and today more common. You need to decide you want to have your website design, you want to have your business cards, your papers, everything look in the same corporate design. Today you can just buy them at a very cheap price at Fiverr or somewhere else, but when I started was every time sit down with designers for a couple of days, sometimes weeks, brush off the logo, decide on what font you want to use, decide on the color values, then do some extensive internet search if somebody else may be using a similar design, and then say, okay, now we do it. Today, basically, everything looks the same anyway, so there's no more big reason to look for a different design. At least that's how I feel. So you just choose something you like, and pretty, for 100, couple of 200 euros, maybe you can find a complete set. Everything is ready, website included, and don't waste time thinking about it, just start. The staff part is a bit more tricky. This one is, I put in here as an example that you can also talk about problems an entrepreneur may have on the personal or interhuman relations part that you may want to have help with when you're doing a company. So one of the questions, of course, we talked about that also, how can you find the best people that match? Now again, a more tax-related question. If I decide I want to pay for education of my staff, how do I need to do that? Can I even do that in this tax regime that I'm living? If I give them benefits, bonuses at the end of the year, how do I do that in a way that works again in my tax regime? And this one is one of my personal favorites. How can I ensure there is no dependency on any single individual? That doesn't mean we want to replace anybody in the company. But as I said, that comet will hit. So when you know it will hit, you need to treat everybody differently. You need to be ready to say, okay, when you're going out of this office today, something happens to you. We don't want anything to happen to you, but it will. That comet will hit you. So we need to be ready as a company for that event. When you leave the company at night to go home, if you go on vacation, you need to have everything done in a way that we are not sorry when the comet hits you, at least not for the company. We'll be sorry for you, we'll be sorry for your family, we'll be sorry emotionally, but it cannot be a damage to the company, because that comet will hit. So this one again, how do you ensure that? And that's another question. You need to have some knowledge management in place. You need to, as I said, make sure repetitions are cut. But when you go out there today, everyone needs to find the right knowledge management. Everyone needs to find the right project management. You still don't know if it's the right one in 5 years or 10 years, but you have to do that. And this is probably the most interesting part. So each one of you at some point will need to decide, how do I make money with this? Do I make money by selling my product? Or do I need investors? Do I want to ask my family for money? Or which other way you think you can fund the project? But again, everybody has the same questions over and over and over. So now I'm putting together a little bit of those problems. So everyone who's starting a company begins with a lack of knowledge. Not of everything, but of many things. You want to focus on your venture, you want to focus on your product or your service, but you have to also spend time on not only learning all those legal things, tax things and everything that I talked about before, but also you need to make sure that you still stay up to date all the time. Now, you can say, I want to outsource that. I will get a really good tax advisor, I will get a real good lawyer, I will get a real good human resource guy, I will get somebody who will find VCs and other investors for my company. Well, guess what? They won't work for free, right? So you will need to either pay them, or you will need to give them shares, or even if you pay them, you may say, after 1 year or 2 years, damn, should I have saved that money? Now we're in trouble. The project didn't go as well as I thought, and now we spend so much money on these guys where we could use the money for something else. And now that part that makes it really tough is you could say, I don't fucking care. Yeah? Well, I won't do it. I just start and then do my stuff. That's more important than taking care of contracts or something else. But hey, then when the problem comes back, it will probably bite you in the ass. Right? That's what they say. Why? Because you were not ready. You thought, oh, everything's going to be nice, everything's going to be great, and now I don't have time for this. But boom, you get some paper and says, you need to reply to this by next week with this, and everything. And you need to have it notarized. Not only by your notary, you will have it over-notarized in the embassy somewhere. And then you're like, okay, this is going to cost me at least 2 weeks to do, and they're just giving me 1 week time. Yeah. Bummer, right? We should have done it right in the first place, and everything would be ready for you to submit. So nobody will take any kind of sympathy for you that you're trying to build your product. No. You have to reply in this time, in this manner, otherwise we might even put you in jail. Forget taking away your money or your business, we might put you in jail if you don't. You may become a criminal because you didn't hand in your VAT papers in time. Alright, so now we're laughing, but I'm seeing that. I have a company in Hong Kong, I have a company in UK, I have a company in Germany. Hey, I'm still not a criminal, and I'm surprised because everywhere they will make you a criminal if you don't pay your things in time, if you don't register all those documents in time. And if you're interested, I can show you some of the papers, and I'm sitting there, damn. Now I understand why Oli Hoeneß is in jail. He did not read that letter. They sent it to him and they said, we will put you in jail. But yeah, he didn't reply in time. So, how do I think a framework, or how do I think a system can help you solve all those problems? Well, as I said, the first thing, I think there are two things. I added the term toolbox just today while preparing this, and the framework, because I think they are a little bit, you can very well differentiate between the two. So the toolbox is something that you might all have at home, or at least in the back of your trunk. When you have a tire to fix, you just take the right thing, you change the tire, put the new tire in, put it back, and continue. So you have a tool to change tires, to lift the car. Similar thing could be a toolbox for you as an entrepreneur. So why should I always go to a lawyer and say, I need a work contract for this person? if there's probably already a work contract in place, he's probably just going to charge you again for the same contract that he's been selling to other companies the last 10, 20, 30 years. But there's not a lot of people out there who say, hey, let's buy a contract, not just for ourselves, but for this group of people who all have the same problem. We'll just pay that lawyer to make sure he keeps it updated. The same can be true for everything I listed on that long list of legal requirements. But currently, it's probably you just have to look for these things on the internet. You will find some, but I haven't yet found a group or an organization that say, okay, I want to become a member, and there I just say, oh, I need this contract for that and that country for this and this occasion. And they are making sure that this lawyer who is giving them the contract, and therefore thereby giving it to me, is under some obligation to make sure that this contract is actually valid at the moment that I'm using it. So this can be documents, as I said before, it could be design sets that you put together, but also a choice of productivity tools. So when you're thinking today about which mail service or newsletter service do I want to use to promote my products, you will have tons of options. But do you know which one of those is really the choice for your company? It will take you some time to make that decision for yourself. Same for project management, same for a knowledge base, same for, as we said in IT parts before, the framework you may want to choose. But it could be a blessing if you say, I don't want to worry about that. Here are some guys who are saying, hey, you have to use Trello, you have to use MailChimp, you have to use Confluence, and you have to use Bitbucket. That's it. Why? Because we have built a framework, we know how this works, and we chose that if you want to follow this framework or this set of instructions that we're giving you, this is what we believe in will be the choice, the best choice for all of our members or all of those that are following this framework. So this part is a bit mixed. It can be used as toolbox part, but also as part in the framework. Now, as I said, one idea is we're preparing a huge toolbox of all kinds of things that an entrepreneur in somewhere along the journey will need. It's ready. Here it is. You can use it whenever you need. Now the other one is, as I said before, how do I make sure those tools are still the ones you will need? Somebody needs to control that. There needs to be some quality assurance that those tools are still the ones you need. There needs to be somebody who checks if you're actually using them the correct way. You may use a hammer to drill a hole. It's not very practical, but it works. So the framework would say, use hammer to put nails in wall straight. Yeah? Use screwdriver if you want to take the screws out or put them back in. These kind of things, I would say, is part of the framework. We have the tools, and we tell you which ones to use. Don't use that old screwdriver because nobody is producing any more of those screws. Update to next screwdriver that is current today. Now comes the part where I say I will need you to give me feedback. Because when you go into the framework, you have different ways. You could say, I want to control myself. It's enough for me to say, well, I'll have a checklist. I will check, yes, I have backups of my software, yes, I have limited the usage of emails, yes, I have the current antivirus in place. Self-control. But how many of you actually do that? How many of you sit down during your studies or during your business? Now, this is a serious question. And check yourself. Anybody here?
For knowledge or for what we are lacking?
Well, basically on the status of where you're at and where you want to go, and if you're doing things properly.
Every day.
Every day. Good for you. Who else?
I need to check the way where I'm actually going in
Yeah.
the right direction.
Yeah.
That
Who else?
cannot work without.
How do you do that?
Simplest. Just by thinking. To see, am I going towards my vision? Am I using correct tools?
Okay.
Am I using correct resources? Am I resourceful? Do I spend my money somewhere where I shouldn't spend it? Is every penny has a utility to me? Everything is set towards something. This is how I think.
Well, congratulations. Then you don't need a framework. Probably not. But how many else?
Are you talking now about evaluating the business or the person?
Well, it's more from the business perspective, I would say. But you can also apply that to yourself. So if you're saying, do I check every week? How much do I weigh? Is my blood pressure still okay? Do I eat the correct stuff? Did I see my doctor according to schedule? Did I finish my education? Did I, whatever goals you may have set, that can be both true for you personally or as an entrepreneur.
I think we all do it in some way, especially regarding business. And I think most of us do it in old-fashioned way. Running down, check, how's this going? Stuff like
But I mean, do you actually sit down and allocate time to that? Or is it more of a process of a feeling? And I say, everything should be okay. Or is it, I sit down now, here's my checklist, and this is everything I did last year in 2016. And it actually...
Because you're going to get lost otherwise.
Yeah.
But that's what people lack, I think. The self-drive to sit down and control yourself and see what have I done wrong, how to improve it and move further. I think that's what people lack. That's why there aren't many entrepreneurial types in society.
For me, that's a big problem. Sorry.
Yeah.
About the self-control checklist, is that referred to other members or just myself?
No, in this case, it would be, there is a checklist that allows you to check yourself.
Yeah, but I have a problem there because I'm working on something with a couple of people and they can't progress unless I fix certain stuff.
Right.
So I am actually trying to make some sort of fundamental stuff so that they could keep working. And I'm not that bad at it, I guess. But the thing is, do you think that when people work on themselves and are doing the self-checklists as for themselves is actually not that good because you don't have anything else to compare it with? If in this case I have people who can actually give me their feedback regarding what I'm doing. So
that is one way of doing it. That's what I'm trying to get to right now with this. So one way of doing it is somebody else checks you, or somebody else tells you what you're doing right or wrong. But that means you actually have somebody else to do that for you, right? So my initial thought is, let's say if we have these questions here, for example, and at some point I made a decision, this should be our domain policy, this should be the communication rules that we have, this should be the knowledge tool that we're going to use. This is the project management that we have. This is our secure backups. Now I can say by myself, I made these rules. I will sit down every week and say to myself, Burak, we as a company, are we following our email domain policy? Yes. Are we following our communication rules? Yes. Are we using the knowledge management tool the way it was intended? Yes or no? Is that project management the way it's supposed to be? Yes. Do we have all our backups in place? Yes. If you give 5 yeses, super, continue. But even that, I have personally problems with. Sitting down every time and checking this is just one part, right? If I have all those decisions at some point, and made rules for them, I don't remember sitting down myself and saying, oh, let's today check everything, unless I want to invest into somebody else, right? That's when you sit down and say, all right, get out that due diligence list with 2,000 questions, and let's see. Yeah? Do you have your IP in place? Do you have your employees under contract? Did you make the service contracts? Where's your knowledge management? Do your backups exist? If yes, where? In how many copies? When was the last time that you've actually updated those, etc., etc.? So then you normally sit down and spend time. What I'm trying to get to with this framework is to say, how can we put us as entrepreneurs in a position that I can always say, oh, no problem, here it is. I don't care how long your due diligence list is, it's probably not longer than the framework of rules that we're working by. Don't waste my time explaining it to you, here's everything. Here are the rules that we gave ourselves. Here's the last time it was checked. Here is where you can see why we made that decision. Here you can say, how can I get, as an investor, my monthly reports from the accountant? All these kinds of different things that we have decided for, or I have decided for myself in my first company, then second company, then third company, and then in the invested companies, they're always the same. But I wish we had made these rules from the beginning in a way that I can say, hey, there's the rule set, and now that rule set will tell me by itself, 1 month is over, check your backups. 1 month is over, automatically all tax reports go not only to yourself, not only to your controlling officer, not only to your bank, but also to all your shareholders, automatically. New employment law in Germany. Now we have just updated all your contracts in our database, but you are still using the old one. Please make sure that you make this annex to the contract with each one of your employees. This would be possible today, but it's not being done, or very few people do it in large companies where you say, I have a huge group of lawyers and it's their job to take care of this. But I'm thinking a framework could do that. A group of entrepreneurs that come together and say, we want to find one lawyer. His job is to make sure all contracts are in place, and the framework will give me a warning. There's an update on work contracts. There's an update on tax regulation, paragraph 1755, whatever. That means for you as a company, you need to make sure everything is adjusted, and don't wait for your tax advisor to call you. Here's the warning. Please don't proceed on anything before you have this fixed, because tomorrow is due date, and otherwise it will cost this much money. Now, this all may still be a little bit too abstract, but I said before, think about you want to buy something. And most of you, I'm very sure, have the dream of selling their company at some point, or at least making a good load of money selling some shares of the company, and you're already done. Why are you even sitting here? You don't want to...
just to create a company to sell it. I don't like that.
No, I'm not saying it's the idea to start, but I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, I have this company, maybe I will sell it for a lot of money at some point. It could be an option, yeah. I mean, how many of you want to work till they're 85 and then still you have to run the company? Then I would say you're making a mistake, my friend. Yeah, you should make sure that at some point you have made a regulation that the company will be able to continue without you, that your family is safe, you're married, have kids, etc. All these things that you may today say, oh, not so important, but when you get towards my age or older, you will see, okay, there may be other things than working all day and coding all day. Right? So, saying at some point it will be natural that you will need to think about how does this business continue without me, and one viable way is you sell. I'm not saying it's my goal, I also didn't sell my companies. But I'm saying that is a point when you need to be ready. And I'm running my companies that way that I say, if I have to sell, I can tell to that person, hey, here's everything. You can log into our knowledge management. I can give your email address to my tax advisor, and he will put you automatically into the list of people who get the monthly reports. You can see all our backups are in place. You can talk to everybody, and actually, you know what? You don't even need to waste my time doing it. You can do that, and that, I'm sure, will have an immediate effect on that person to say, oh my God, these guys are ready. Actually, these guys don't even need me because they already have everything in place. So your benefit is you can say, oh, I really don't need you. Or if you really want to buy, let's talk about that again. But to get you there, we'll need some type of control. As I said, you can do that yourself, or you can trust to a framework, and now I'm hoping again that the group will have an opinion here. What if the university or the university incubator program would say, we're actually giving you a certificate as an entrepreneur, that you're following all these guidelines that we have, that you're checking yourself regularly, that you're following the framework's rules, and in the end we will give you a report. It's a new project, so we don't know how popular that may be in the future, but some investor company may say, you know what, I don't invest into companies in Split unless they are certified by the university incubator. Because we don't have time to do all that long due diligence, we know they're already doing it in a professional way. So it can be something like ISO certificate that some companies do. It could also be a certificate that we're saying these companies are following certain principles, a certain framework, and we, as an outside source, are making sure that they're actually doing it, not just saying they are. That's an idea, and if that is something we as a group would like to do, then I would be grateful to help and do that here. But it's something we should think about. The fourth part, of course, that's something more complicated, but that's what I hear everywhere. We need experts, we need mentors. It's not enough to just have all those rules and laws. We also need the experience. We need to have people that we can talk to in urgent situations. So now again the question is, what's easier for you as a single person to find that expert, or can that group that is using the framework, and can the framework itself do the same thing as they've done for your project management and for your mail list and your servers? Say, okay, we have these 6, 7 experts in those different areas that have agreed to give help to our group. It may cost something, it may be free, that I don't know, but at least there's a choice of valued or approved experts available through the framework. Now, why? I think it has hopefully become clear by now. Main target, save time, save money, don't have to worry about everything, don't have to buy all that expertise or time from others. Security in a way that you can say, okay, if I follow this, chances are, like in a house, when I build the fundament correctly, if I build the framework correctly, chances are higher that it will stay properly. So that you also have. If you follow a framework, then you can trust this should work. This should be secure the way it is. Get a certificate if that is available. Get additional expertise again if that is available. And I've been thinking about this for a couple of years. So far, I've only been able to find one company that's offering a similar service. That's Startup Rocket. However, they're still very much focused on, at least that way I feel, on a business plan, on the accounting side of this. How do I start a company according to a business plan, and do I stick to it? My approach is more universal, where I say there are different areas that the framework needs to give you guidance in. But feel free to test them, and we can share experiences there if you want. Now, I'm a nice guy, but I don't usually work for free. So you will ask, why is this guy doing that? One opportunity I see here for me is, instead of giving people my money and my time, one type of investment could be to say, I've actually created my framework that I think you should follow. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready, and do you understand what that benefit is for you when I give you a framework to work with? Yes, in return I want something that's to be discussed. If it's shares, if it's money, if it's friendship, if it's a beer. Yeah, how many people have paid me for using WinRAR? Not too many in this room, not too many on earth, but I'm always open to be invited for a beer. So, right? So there's always different ways of how to deal with payments. So here, that's what I'm thinking is, if such a framework were in place, it would, one, be nice for me to say, hey, all those mistakes we've made and all that money we've lost investing into other companies, finally something came out of it, and now we can say we only want to invest in companies that follow that framework, that understand why it's so important to have these different kinds of rules. And in return, I hope you understood that there could be a benefit for entrepreneurs to have a framework in place. And feel free to send me emails. I can offer you one of the very long due diligence lists if you would like to see how a due diligence is actually done at an investment stage. And I would love to keep you updated. If you feel there's something I can give that you would like to discuss with me, feel free to let me know. I'm here in Split. So I would love to get to know all of you better at the time you have time for coffee. And if you want to have any urgent information now, please let me know what you thought was most interesting, most demanding, totally useless, or something you didn't understand so far.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Please.
The startup framework, it's in which phase as a project now?
At the current stage, it's basically, I can go back, we're in stage 1, where I say we basically have a list of checklists and workflows that we can share. However, I think the real nice part will be part 2 and 3, to get it into a platform status online. And then that's what I think is the real value here, is if you can make it a certification process. If it can become something that people see as I don't know, TÜV in Germany, or the engineers when you check your car, that it's ready for traffic. Yes, this company is ready for investment, basically. Or this company is future-proof, because they are following. So that's where I would love to get it to.
Speaking of Germany, now we come to my next question. It will cover geographically which companies? For
Which
example,
countries?
You were saying you were talking about also legal rules and stuff like that. So basically you would need to have a person that will, you will have a person who will track it in Germany, but you won't have, I don't know, a person that will track it in Singapore, let's say, something like that.
Well, in the beginning, I trust that it's always useful to start where you are. So the step next for me would be, how do you do that in Croatia? So my part is, yes, I can pretty much answer all of that for Germany, partially also for some other countries, but I think that will only have limited benefit for us here as a group. However, I already know that one of the major concerns of IT companies here is how do I protect my intellectual property right according to Croatian laws? So it may become if you really want to do this, you have to found a company in Hong Kong or UK or Finland or wherever in a structure that works in Croatia with the following DOO holding the service agreements or whatever. But I say it must be a solution for here if that's something we want to do here. As a global entrepreneur, of course, I say you need to have the goal of offering this as a global service. It shouldn't make a difference if you're in Croatia or UK or US or Germany if you want to use this platform. And yes, most rules will pretty much be the same, but some will be very different. So at that point, I'm glad to think about certified in Germany versus certified in Croatia versus certified in US. But for now, I think to limit yourself to those rules that are globally correct everywhere is already enough, because most entrepreneurs don't even do that.
Basically, everything revolves around the finance thing. Whenever you speak to someone about the startup or the company, everyone says, well, what's your business plan? How do you do it? This is great. I was just thinking, because it shows you that the company is complete. That it's thinking about the future-proofness, but about how to survive, how to be a solid entity. That's why I like the whole idea of the framework, especially the certification process that you said. That will be quite challenging. So even in Germany, here, but even in Germany.
When talking about certification, a simple question may be, does this company have a manual? Now, you buy your car, there's a manual. You buy your water cooker, there's a manual. You buy your vacuum cleaner, there's a manual. But you buy a company, who gives you a manual? I can. Because when we set up our knowledge management, I said, even though I don't want to sell the company, you know what would be fun? To print out the manual of our company and put it on the table. Yeah? You want to know how to operate this company? Everything's in here. Well, I have never printed it out, but I know that the content management on Confluence is very extensive. So we've never done that, but I said, yeah, that will be fun to just say, and you know what? The price of the sale just went up. Let's say 1,000 euros per page. That's still cheap. Try to buy that much knowledge in another investment. Who has ever done that work to put everything in place? So this is, sometimes it's funny to think about it like that. I would probably give it as a RAR file, but still, it can be expensive to do. Yeah.
Okay, can this framework be used on any kind of business? Or is it strictly for a certain field? Let's say informatics technology or something.
No, I think there will be a lot of parts of this which will be true everywhere. I understand that there will be differences between companies, but that's the reason why you build, one of the reasons why you build a framework is you say, okay, this will be the general structure, but you can still decide if you want to have big windows, big doors, yellow walls, a garage inside, or a playground. It will still allow to use it in different ways, but it will always be a house or a dome structure or whatever you decide it will be. So yes, I hope that it will be very flexible. And yes, I hope that it will be written and prepared in a way that you can use it for pretty much any business. But yes, I also understand somebody who's repairing cars as his main profession will have a totally different use than somebody who wants to build the next Facebook. So totally different approach. Yes, even the guy who's repairing cars needs to make sure he pays his taxes, that he has proper contracts with his employees, that he has some small website with terms of service, etc. So yes, I'd say there are a lot of things that any company can use, but not everything, for sure.
Okay guys, we're going to finish because we have at 7 at Faculty of Engineering the hackathon meeting, so thank you all for coming.
All right, well, thank you for taking your Friday afternoon, and I hope there was some interest in this, and hope to get to know all of you a little better in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.